8 now on Breakfast. Good morning. The decision to scale back the police investigation into Bloody Sunday is to be challenged in court by some of the victims' relatives. The police say they had to do it because of budget cuts. Belfast-based solicitors Madden and Finucane are taking the proceedings. Peter Madden is from the firm. Kate Duddy's brother Jackie was killed on Bloody Sunday, and Mickey McKinney's brother William also died. Good morning to you all, and thanks very much
Good morning.
for joining us. Kate, I'll just start with you. Why have the families decided to take this step?
I think it's ridiculous that they even have to consider doing this at this minute in time. For all the years we have had a fight to get their names cleared, because they were, at the beginning they called them nail bombers and gunmen. After a long, lengthy time, that was finally, all that slur was taken from them. Now they have the audacity to turn around and say that they haven't the money to carry out a murder investigation. This murder investigation should have been done by the RUC. Now the PSNI are also going to pull the plug on it. It's an absolute disgrace. Our loved ones have been cleared. They've been 100% proved innocent. Why is this now at this minute in time?
Mickey, you obviously believe as well this is the right thing to do. Is it fair to say this is the final piece? I don't want to use the word on your journey, but this is the final step that you feel that you need?
Well, of course, when we started the campaign with 3 demands, and this is the third demand, that those responsible for the murders on Bloody Sunday be prosecuted. I want to say that the Chief Constable's decision to end this murder inquiry was made on the eve of the commencement of the process where soldiers were to be interviewed under caution.
Mm-hmm. It's important to point out they're saying at the moment it's been scaled back as opposed to completely ended.
Of course, but less than 6 months ago the PSNI talked of a statutory duty of investigating fully all matters of serious crime, including murder, on the pursuit of the Boston College tips. It appears that this statutory duty does not extend to the murders committed by the British Army.
Can you take on board, though, that George Hamilton has said that, that because that where they're at in terms of money, their focus has to be on policing the present as opposed to the past? How do you feel when you hear that? Okay.
My young brother, all the deceased and injured of Bloody Sunday, I think, are entitled to as much as what anybody can give them. It's very, very important for us as a family. They know who murdered my brother. They know who murdered them all. Why are they using money now as an excuse? It has always been the one thing that has been through in our face over the years. All we ever hear about is money. Our loved ones are worth more than all the money in the world.
I just want to bring in Peter Madden. Peter, how long would this legal challenge take?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that when Lord Savile published his report in June 2010, that started off an investigation, if you like, into a murder investigation. And the fact is that when Lord Savile said that there was unjustifiable firing, and that unjustifiable firing was the cause of the deaths and injuries, and none of the people, none of the casualties, he called, were posing a threat or anything else that could in any way be viewed as justifying the shooting. Now, that's murder. And what happened then was that the matter was then passed to the police to read the report, and it took some time to do that. And an investigation team was then appointed into the murders. Now, the families met with Judith Gillespie and Drew Harris in December 2012 when they introduced themselves and introduced the murder investigation team. And since then, the families have had quarterly meetings with the head of the investigation, Chief Inspector Ian Harrison. And during the process and during those talks, the families were told that the money for this investigation was ring-fenced. In other words, couldn't be touched. And I think it's very important that now that we're at the stage, as Mickey McKinney has mentioned there, that the police were ready to go to England to interview the soldiers. That would involve them being arrested and questioned. Now, my understanding is that the plane tickets were bought by the police and had to be cancelled. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard. But the press and media can ask those questions.
As you say, you don't know that is the case. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, it's easy to find out. It's just a matter of asking the questions. But if whether or not the tickets were bought isn't relevant, what's important is that the police were at a stage, and the families, had been pushing the police for some time to interview the soldiers. These soldiers are suspects. They're murder suspects, and they were murder suspects right along, but they certainly became into the frame as murder suspects when Lord Savile published his report 4 years ago. So in this jurisdiction and in the UK and South, when there's reasonable suspicion of anybody that they've committed serious offences or even any offences, if there's reasonable suspicion that somebody has committed murder, they're immediately arrested.
Indeed.
And then any solicitor practicing now will tell you that they're immediately arrested. People are immediately arrested and questioned. Now,
and it's up to the court of law to determine whether the soldiers are guilty of murder. And not to cut across you, but I do want to put this point to you, Mr. Madden.
I just want to finish that point. What I'm saying is that anybody who's suspected of murder is arrested and questioned, and then either released on bail or released for a report. But they're certainly the first step in that process is to be arrested and questioned. That didn't happen.
Indeed. And then, of course, due process takes over, and then it's up to a court of law to determine whether the soldiers are guilty of murder. The point I did want to put to you, Mr. Madden, was that, as everyone will be aware, this was 1972. Time is pushing on in terms of prosecutions. How long will it take for this legal challenge to take its course? Are we talking months? Are we talking years? How long?
Well, the first step, it's a step-by-step process. The first step is that the papers were lodged yesterday, and they're fairly voluminous and detailed. But the court will fix a date very shortly to hear legal argument as to whether or not there is an arguable case to be heard by a court. And if that succeeds, then a date will eventually be fixed for the hearing of the judicial review. But in the meantime, I think the families have been lobbying politicians to get this decision reversed. This is not necessarily depending on a judicial review. Judicial review decision will be made eventually.
But when you say eventually, I take it you do mean at least a number, maybe 2 to 3 years before a decision comes through. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that's a bit pessimistic. I think this can be moved fairly quickly in view of the fact that this has been dragged on for so long.
So it could be moved within a year, perhaps.
Well, the fact is that the police budget, so-called budget, has been cut, and we don't know why it was cut, why any of these budgets were cut, first of all. Second of all, the budget that is now in existence, we don't know how it's allocated.
Okay.
We don't know how much of that money has been allocated to investigations, murder investigations, and which investigations. Again, there it was mentioned, Mickey there mentioned about the Boston College tapes. The police threw money at that investigation, in which they sent police officers certainly to the States to cover court cases and the interview at Boston College, and they also conducted illegal challenges in Belfast.
Okay, I just want to bring Kay back into the discussion here. Kay, is that something that always kind of weighs down on you a little bit in terms of the time frames? Time's, pressing on?
Time's pressing on. We have already handed this from one generation to another. We are now the second generation having to deal with this. And the last thing that I want to do is to have to possibly hand it on to the next generation. And the way they're stalling the meeting now, that's beginning to look like a possibility. And it's the last thing in the world that I want. Our family needs to know. They know, the army, the police, the government know who murdered our loved ones. They have every bit of information that they need. Why are they pulling this stunt now? And that's all I can call it at the minute.
Do you get tired at all, Mickey? You're someone who went to London every day. You're now looking into a new phase. How do you feel about that? Is there something still driving you on, or do you start to feel exhausted at times?
I think we all feel exhausted. We all get tired because it has been a lengthy process. But it's seeking truth. We need justice. Our relatives were murdered, and there was attempted murder took place that day, and we have a responsibility to our family relatives.
In terms of what happens now, Kay? There's a quote from Gregory Campbell this morning on the front page of the newsletter saying this call for new legal action flies in the face of reality, given where we're at in terms of historic investigations, given where we're at in terms of money. How do you respond to that?
I respond to that our loved ones, we need to know, they know who murdered our loved ones. We are talking murder here. And I don't care whether Gregory says it in English or Irish. We need to know, we have to have the truth. We know that our loved ones were murdered. And I will go to my dying grave to find out, they know exactly who, what soldier, what member of the British Army that murdered my 17-year-old brother. And I don't care what anybody else has to say about it. That is so important to us. We need the truth. We need them. They got the opportunity and they didn't take the opportunity at the Savile inquiry. They lied throughout the inquiry. They thought they'd buried the lie that long that they would get away with it. They're not getting away with it. We need them brought to justice. Our loved ones were 100% innocent, and nobody can argue with that.
Thank you both indeed very much for joining us this morning. That was Kate Duddy speaking there, Mickey McKinney, thank you very much, and Peter Madden from Madden and Finucane, thank you very much for joining us on the programme this morning. Thank you.